Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and tonight we have a treat in store for you. It's a 2-hour transfer deadline day special, with the first hour dedicated to our regular show and the second a transfer bonanza as the window draws to a close. There will be plenty of special guests this evening, but joining me to start with is GFFN's very own Lee Davey and our regular stalwart Eric Devine. But there's plenty to get through tonight, so before we start, here is the latest news. Marseille and Lille got a crowded week in French football off to a dramatic start on Friday evening. Youngster Antoine Rabiard scored from a free kick deep in stoppage time to snatch a point at 1-0 after Sébastien Courtier had given Les Deux an early lead. Saturday's early match saw Angers win for the first time in 5 matches, a comprehensive 3-0 home defeat of Monaco, powered by a shaken Doy brace. In the multiplex, Lyon's misery continued in losing a feisty affair away to Bastia 1-0, a much-needed 3 points for new manager François Ciccolini. Nantes, meanwhile, continued their stealthy rise up the table with a road win over Troyes, the 1-0 victory extending an unbeaten run that now stretches to 11 matches and leaves them just 2 points off Rennes in 6th. At Lorient, Zargo Touré and Yann Jouffre combined twice to increase the worries on Reims. The 2-0 victory dragging Les Merlus a robust 7 points from the drop. In France's southwest, Gangomp's Jimmy Briand scored a winner midway through the second half to give the visitors a crucial 2-1 win, a victory over hosts Toulouse. Montpellier, however, were the real surprise of the day as they put 4 past hosts Gazalec, Brian Dabo scoring a brace and drawing a penalty to see new managers Frédéric Hans move Lapéard out of the relegation zone. Sunday's early match saw Caen notch their second consecutive win, matching fellow surprise packages Angers to keep pace with the European contenders as they knocked back Nice at home 2-0. Bordeaux look not to have missed a beat despite departures of Wabi Kazri and Henri Savet as they thumped Rennes 4-0 at home, a result that will provide some consolation after losing to Lille 5-1 in the Coupe de Ligue semi-final last midweek. Paris Saint-Germain's win over Saint-Etienne at the Chauderon wasn't as comprehensive as it may have looked with 2-0, but the champions showed good character in defeating Les Verts in a chippy affair. Who else but Zlatan Ibrahimovic, netting twice after the club's defeat of Toulouse in their own Coupe de la Ligue semi-final. In Ligue 2, top 4 Nancy, Dijon, Metz and Le Havre all won to keep the race for promotion a tight one, with most sides in action again tomorrow. Liga is also preparing for a round of midweek fixtures. Monaco versus Bastia and Montpellier versus Marseille start the action. Most teams play on Wednesday before the round concludes on Thursday with Rennes at Saint-Etienne. Follow our commentary account at GFFM Match Zone to stay up to date with all the latest goals from the League and the Cups during that midweek section. Just before we move on from the news, Eric, just a quick update on the transfer deadline day so far today.
Yeah, a few deals going through today. The one of most note is the move of Sunderland striker to Marseille on loan. He's out of contract at the end of the season, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes. Other confirmed signings include Abdoulaye Doucouré to Watford. The player had been linked with a move in the summer prior to a shoulder injury. He's been purchased by Watford but loaned to Granada for the rest of the season, as Granada is another team owned by the Pozzo family. Lille has signed a former Braga striker and current Swansea player Adair on loan for the rest of the season. Johan Carasso has moved from Metz to Reims on a permanent deal. He's a goalkeeper, brother of Cedric. Mathieu Debuchy has moved to Bordeaux on loan for the rest of the season in an effort to boost his Euro 2016 chances. Ole Christian Selnas, as a Norwegian youth international, is signed with Saint-Etienne on a 4.5-year deal. Lille youngsters Suelio Mete and Baptiste Guillaume have moved to Belgian side Zulte Waregem and KV Oostende, respectively, both promising youngsters in search of more playing time. And lastly, former Montpellier defender Hamid El Kautari has moved to Reims on loan for the remainder of the season. after spending the first 6 months of the campaign with Palermo in Italy.
Thank you very much, Eric. We'll have more news throughout the 2 hours, and we'll focus more in depth with those deals in the second hour. And remember, for all your latest news, head on over to our website, www.getfootballnewsfrance.com, where the transfer blog has been up and running all day. Follow us on Twitter at GFN_France. We start this evening with the league leaders as Paris Saint-Germain ran out 2-0 winners against Saint-Etienne. It wasn't as easy as the scoreline suggests, but nonetheless, the victory opens the gap between PSG and the rest of Ligue 1 to 24 points. Lee, welcome to the show. Before we talk about the huge advantage in the table at the moment, was last night's win a classic case of winning when you're not at your best for PSG?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was by no stretch PSG's best performance of the season, and being honest, I thought it was a potential banana skin from the start. Saint-Etienne, going to Saint-Etienne at any time of the season is always a difficult one, but certainly it was a mark of champions, a performance from the mark of champions in the sense that you can go to such a tough place and take the 3 points, and you always felt that PSG could step up another level, go into another gear. And that's exactly what they did. They took their chances and came away 2-0 winners.
Eric, what did you think to the performance last night? Like we say, it wasn't as easy as it may have seemed from the scoreline.
No, and the way Saint-Etienne set themselves out, I think, was really surprising as well. Playing this 3-4-3 with Renaud Coad and Urban Lemoine in midfield, I think you always knew it would be a sort of a chippy affair. I think Saint-Etienne at their best, both in defense and going forward, have operated in a 4-2-3-1 with Valentin Aycerich centrally, but using this three-man defense, even in the absence of Loic Perrin, I think that even at home it was pretty apparent from the start that tactically that Saint-Etienne were going to try and do much as they had done against Lyon, is set up and play very aggressively, lots of crunching tackles and really trying to throw the champions off their game. To use their physicality to unsettle them, and for a while it looked like it would work, but two fairly fine finishes from Ibrahimovic proved the difference. You might be able to take the likes of Franck Taverneau to task for the way that he allowed Aurier to get past him so easily for the one goal, but on the whole, I think that you're right in saying that that they showed quite a bit of character. Saint-Etienne were set up for a very negative, chippy match. And we've seen that be the undoing of some other teams in Ligue 1 this year, notably Lyon. But it seems as if the champions, had the confidence to know that the goals were always going to come.
Yeah, it was a really interesting affair. I thought Saint-Etienne put in a relatively decent performance, and if especially someone like Kevin Monipaquet, who seemed to get all the chances landing at his feet, had his shooting boots on, it might have been a different case. But it was Zlatan who grabbed the 2 goals. Lee, he's come under criticism at the start of the season for a bit of poor form, but he's really on song at the moment, isn't he?
He is, and I wrote a piece for Get French Football News earlier in the season on whether Zlatan actually should maybe be dropped for some games. Since then, as is typical, he's found some fantastic form, and really, I mean, every time he's in possession of the ball in around the area, he looks dangerous, and obviously, back end of last season into this season, he had a few injury problems and he lost his form. There was no doubt about that, but he's really picked that up. And again, there where he needed to be last night. 2 good finishes and really certainly showing the kind of form that he had when he first came to PSG. Obviously, not completely him. There was some great build-up play. Serge Aurier's cross for the first goal, absolutely tremendous. And Zlatan's in fantastic form at the moment.
Yeah, it might have been a little bit lucky, the second one. It landed.
I didn't mention that one, of course.
Yeah, I think he can claim that one as a nice finish because he's allowed to, because it's Zlatan, we'll let him have that. But Eric, we were mentioning that at the end of this season, it looks like Zlatan may be going in. He may be staying now, and that Cavani would presumably take his position at that head of that attack. But with his form, and especially Cavani's form at the moment, is that maybe a wise decision? Maybe you profit maybe more from selling Cavani in the summer?
I think so, in terms of a sell-on fee. I mean, Cavani's a player who is 6 years younger than Zlatan, I believe. So obviously you're going to be able to turn a bigger profit on him, especially considering Zlatan's out of contract and is essentially a free agent in the summer. That being said, it seems that the way that the team are approaching this season, with REA back to his best as we've seen Toulouse, the arrival of Di Maria, it really seems that there's much more of a motivation and a focus around PSG, and they've pulled out even the games where it seemed like things were against them. We witnessed that match against Lille early in the season that Adrien Rabiot was sent off midway through the first half. Thiago Motta came on, shored things up, and it was job done. I think that was sort of, that could have gone very awry. To be playing with 10 men for 70 minutes so early in the season, away to Lille, it's always going to be a tough match, but that I think really set the tone for this season. This team has shown a willingness to come back in even the most adverse circumstances. I mean, their one loss this season was due to a totally freak goal from Real Madrid, and it's just an increased level of professionalism throughout the team. And I think that Zlatan in particular has really picked up his form and shown a greater willingness to drive on. I mean, the one thing that's eluded him is Champions League success. But I think that from the way he's playing, he feels that this team has the ability to really do something special, both in the league and in Europe. So you're seeing him playing with, for my money, probably the highest degree of motivation we've seen from him, barring his first season at the club.
I'm going to throw the same question at you, Lee, but in a slightly different way. Do you think that Zlatan maybe might get an extra contract and then maybe even force Cavani out of the club, and then maybe the club signs a young striker to play behind Zlatan for another year? Or because the profit you could gain from a Cavani sale could be really good for the club for financial fair play as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one to kind of feast our eyes on over the summer months. There's been no secret that Zlatan's contract was up at the end of the season. I think that, and certainly in terms of Cavani, he would have had his eyes on that central spot. And obviously, I think the idea was that Cavani was going to be the man to take over from Zlatan going forwards over the next few years, and be the top man, the striker, the number 9. For whatever reason, it's reported that Blanc and certain senior members of the team are not too happy with certainly some of the behaviours of Cavani, and now his future's in doubt. Now, a lot depends on Zlatan for me, what happens there, whether the club do decide to give him another year's contract. As it stands right now, I mean, who would argue with it? He's in fantastic form. He's playing as well as he's ever played at PSG. He's scoring goals regularly. He's creating chances, and he's got a really good understanding with Di Maria. And this link up that these two guys have got at the moment is really, I mean, if you're a PSG fan, it's fantastic to see. So a lot hinges on that, and again, the next couple of months will really be key as to finding out what kind of direction Blanc wants his forward three to go in. If they do, and if Zlatan does sign a new contract, I certainly feel that will be the end for Cavani. I think that he will go potentially to a Premier League team, but I think he will go at that point, which then leaves wider, obviously a wide open berth then for the likes of the Pastoris and Lucas's. But yeah, I do think that days could be numbered for Edinson Cavani.
It will be an interesting one in the summer, and we've mentioned before, Eric, about Di Maria's form, and he potentially could be a Ligue 1 player of the season. But there's another player that I think might pip him to the post, from my opinion, and it might be a bit of an unfashionable one, but I think Serge Aurier's had a fantastic season. And my question to you is not, is he the best player in Ligue 1 at the moment, but is he possibly even the best right back in Europe? It's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't see this one coming, Nathan. Gosh, on current form, it's hard thinking across the top teams in Europe, who I think would surpass him. I mean, Hector Bellerin has struggled with injury a little bit for Arsenal this season. Um, Philip Lahm, when played at right back, is still a tremendous player there, but that's not always his preferred position. Dani Alves is getting on a bit. I think that the directness he can show when at his best, his ability to provide crosses, his ability to score, his physicality in defending, his pace. He's got a good disciplinary record. I think you may be onto something there, Nathan. Especially considering that he is only 23, I believe, and there's still, given his injury history since arriving at PSG, there's still definitely room for improvement, especially when playing alongside such a talented group of fellow players.
At 23, you are right there, Eric. It's pretty surprising to remember that he's still that sort of age. And that was the question I was struggling with earlier. The only person I can think of who would be better than him is probably Philip Lahm, but he's not a regular right back anymore. So that's why the question really is an interesting one, I think. But moving on to sort of the gap in that table, Lee, we mentioned it a moment ago. It's 24 points now, which, if maintained, I've done the maths. They could win the league in mid-March in a game away to Troyes if they got a draw. If results stay the same, if they don't increase the gap in any way. What's that? Is that telling of the state of Liga at the moment? Are PSG just that much better than everyone else?
It's an interesting one because I can see it from different viewpoints. Obviously, the way it stands, and for somebody who's not a regular follower of Ligue 1 to take a look at the league table right now, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. It's not going to entice people to want to watch the product, and it's not good for the gap. The gap is huge. It's absolutely huge. It's a funny one in the sense that, from my point of view, PSG obviously have got a huge financial advantage over the rest of Ligue 1. We know that. But I think there's a responsibility on the rest of the league as well. And there's teams like Saint-Germain, Lyon, Marseille have not stepped up to the plate. It's as simple as that. So I think, although there's a huge gap, there's a responsibility for the state of Ligue 1 at the moment on some of the other teams within the league. Lyon last season had a fantastic season. And we all hoped that they would push on and challenge PSG further this year. That's not happened. It's been, quite frankly, it's been a disaster at Lyon this year. And one of the only good things to come out of this season is a beautiful new stadium. Marseille, again, disaster after disaster in the boardroom, and again, you expected big clubs of France to be pushing and to be putting a bit of pressure on. Nothing coming from there. Saint-Etienne have not been able to find the consistency that they've had the last couple of seasons. So that's just why we find teams like Angers, which is a fantastic story, Caen, all pushing at the top for the top three. So as I said, there is a responsibility on the chasing pack, but also it has to be pointed out with PSG is that last season we had a little bit more of a title race, although they ran away with it in the closing months. I do feel that PSG's complacency last season did cause the title race to be closer than it should have been. What we've found this season with PSG is that this is no longer the case. There's no complacency this season. The motivations are to go to complete the season unbeaten, but I think first and foremost is to get the title wrapped up so they can really push in the latter stages of the Champions League. As you say, that can be wrapped up in mid-March, which would be absolutely incredible. And if they do get through the two-legged tie with Chelsea, that's going to take a lot of pressure off PSG. If the title is wrapped up, then as they advance into the latter stage of the Champions League. So certainly from my point of view, PSG are no longer showing the complacency that they did last season, coupled with the fact that some of the other bigger clubs in France have just not performed.
And everyone's beating everyone at the moment.
Absolutely.
And thinking of Monaco as well, they can't find the consistency, Eric. And do you think it's a similar situation? Is the Liga clubs need to step up, or is it simply PSG in a league that they can essentially money roll?
Well, I think it's a mix of different factors. Obviously, the two clubs that you would have tipped as primary contenders coming into this season would have been Monaco and Lyon, based on the way that they'd finished, or at least at the end of last season. But then, we talk about Lyon have obviously been undone by the injury to Fekir, and other players have missed themselves as well with injury. Lacazette's been out of form. His first touch has really eluded him. You can't undersell how Clinton Hongi, his departure has unsettled the club as well. And then we look at Monaco. There's going to be movement in and out. This is the new philosophy under Rublev, but it didn't really strike me that Monaco were set up to lose Anthony Martial. And that being the case, it's really hard to see how Monaco could, in the wake of his departure, develop a concrete plan to cope with that. I mean, they tried Stefan El-Shaarawy at striker, but he's not the same sort of mobile player who can get things done on the counter that Martial was. They've tried Guido Carrillo, they've tried Lassina Traore as more traditional number 9s. But even though Monaco have been hitting form a little bit more over the past 8 to 10 weeks, as opposed to the beginning of the season, the way they've gone out of both competitions in Europe is disappointing. The way they failed to achieve real consistency in the league is disappointing as well. So I think that it's probably a mixture of 80% PSG's good form, 20% negative circumstances, affecting the PSG's real competition. I would include Marseille in that category as well in most seasons, but as we've seen, their inability to get things done in the last window, in the wake of their after departures, I think has really undone them too. To say nothing of the departure of Marcelo Bielsa. So again, PSG are approaching matches week in and week out with an increased level of professionalism. We didn't see that from them last season. But that being said, circumstances do seem to be conspiring against most of the other title hopefuls. I mean, even if you go down to the likes of a Saint-Etienne, the losses that they've had, Amouma, Perrin, TFL Catherine, Beric, they've had a host of important players miss long spells with injury, whereas PSG have been fairly lucky on that point. I know Verratti and Pastore have missed some time, and David Luiz and Thiago Silva as well, but such depth of their squad, they're also a little bit better able to absorb that than are most of their fellow clubs.
Yeah, when you can replace the likes of David Luiz with Marquinhos, you can be pretty happy, I think. But at least the rest of Liga is competitive. Cut PSG off and adrift, and at least there's competitive games every week. We move on to another Liga boss losing their job this past week as Ghislain Pruton was sacked in favour of the new man Francois Ciccolini. He managed to win in his first game against Lyon. Eric, is he a good appointment for that club?
First of all, I have to say that the sacking of Printemps is mental. I don't understand. Yes, Ciccolini won in his first match, but what Bastia can really hope to achieve with that team? I mean, scraping relegation, he got them to a cup final in France last year. A huge achievement that the club hadn't come anywhere near in 20 years. They were still above the relegation zone, had the league's third best home record. So why is Printemps being moved on? This is a team of, rejects, veteran players, the likes of Mostefa, Peybern, Sebastian Schilacci, young players, loanees. They had Alphonse Areola last season. It's mind-boggling to me that one could expect a dramatic change in results as a result of changing the manager. I just want to say that in Ghislain Printemps' defense. That being said, he's someone that understands the culture of this club, how much this means to the people of Bastia. This is traditionally the strongest, most powerful club on the island, And Bastia's not a big city. It's 40,000, 50,000 people. So I mean, this is really a community club that a lot of people focus on and look to as sort of a rallying point for the city, for the island, a way to put put their area on the map for the rest of France and indeed the rest of the world when they do have results like last season's victory over PSG or an appearance in the Coupe de la Ligue final. And I think Cicilline understands the culture of the club. It would have been very, very easy, for example, on Saturday to lose to Lyon, given the suspension and injuries that they were dealing with. A lot of really important players missed that match, but they played resolutely. Julien Palmieri, in particular, was outstanding, stepping into left back from left midfield. Really gave them a torrid time. And yeah, I think it makes sense if you feel the need to replace Printemps. That being said, I don't understand why Printemps was replaced, given what he'd achieved since taking over. He'd improved their defense. Again, the attack wasn't getting things done, but look, I mean, Floyd Aite, Gael Danic, these are interesting players, but let's face it, I mean, can we really expect more than 6, 7, 8 goals out of players of this caliber over the course of a season? They've had to get rid of their best attackers time and time again, whether that's a Thauvin, whether that's a Boudabous, whether that's a Wabi Kazri. Bastia have been leaking creative players over the last 3 or 4 years, and that eventually catches up with you in terms of your goal scoring tally. So I'm not sure what the club's hierarchy on about, but with Cicilline, I think they're seeking to achieve some level of continuity, especially in terms of the club's culture.
Lee, what did you think to the sacking of Printemps and the appointment of Cicilline? Is that the right move for Bastia at this moment in time?
Well, I guess only time will really tell with that one. It was a bit of a surprise to me at the time. But just looking at the table as it stands right now, it's very congested down there. Bastia currently in 13th, 28 points. And looking at where they are, they're only 3 points off third place. 9 points off third place. That's 3 wins. So in terms of that, it was a bit of a surprise. In terms of the appointment of Cicilline, I guess, is a gentleman that knows the club. And from that point of view, he's, I guess might be a bit of a fan's favourite in that sense, as he knows the club inside out. It will be interesting. We'll see how it goes for Bastia. I guess with Bastia, they need that continuity where, they're the island club. It's, they're very passionate supporters down there. And I guess for that club, it's about knowing what their expectations are. But they're a good club. And I think that, time will tell whether that decision was a good one. I thought it was harsh at the time. But we'll see come the end of the season whether that was the right move or not.
And I don't think it's unfair to say that Bastia have a little bit of previous on this kind of thing. I mean, although it's proved to be a right move to sack Claude Makélélé, it was a little bit of surprise when that happened for Printemps and to come in. And I didn't notice much of a change in the game at the weekend, Eric. It was pretty much Bastia as they usually are. The especially at home, the fiery sort of start and getting organised and playing on the counter. But they really took the game to Lyon at some points of the weekend, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, they're pressing very high up the pitch. Knowing that particular legs of Yanga and Biwa have the odd skewed pass in them, and it worked out well. I mean, just waiting for that error to pounce, and on the goal, if we look at how Titi gets caught out upfield, trying to cut out the pass, and then the goal just comes from there. It's too easy. Playing that patient approach with Lyon seems to be paying dividends, as we saw Saint-Etienne be similarly ruthless a few weeks ago. So it's obvious that this group of players is willing to continue to work despite the change of manager. You just have to wonder what was going on with Printemps behind the scenes, because it doesn't seem like, as you rightly said, there's any real change in approach. not that there really could be with Bastia. I mean, this is the same group of players playing the same philosophy. But yeah, it's just a really interesting set of circumstances to see the way that that Bastia approached the game vis-a-vis Lyon. That Lyon don't seem to be learning any lessons from this, and Bastia, from the way that their play has been ineffective under Bruno Genesio with these inverted wingers in the forms of Gezal and Valbuena, and that it was just too easy for Bastia to just sit and wait, and then slip comes and there you have it. And this time Lyon weren't able to find an equalizer, despite Bastia going down to 10 men late on.
Yeah, and that was an interesting decision in its own right. I think it was a red card, but it was very late on. But Lee, that decision really is to try and avoid relegation in the end of the day, even though they are only 9 points off third, like you say. But do you think they've got enough to stay clear of that compared to some of the other teams down there?
Yeah, I do. I think a lot hinges on their home form. They're not great travellers, and obviously with such a fanatical fan base, there's an onus on them to make it difficult for other sides that are visiting them. They've got enough. They've got enough to get out of it. I mean, looking at where the table right now, I do genuinely believe that there's two or three teams that are worse off than Bastia. I think they'll get out of trouble. It won't be easy. There'll be a few more twists and turns for the Bastia fans between now and the end of the season. But I think they've got enough to get out of trouble.
Eric, just quickly on Lyon. I mean, we mention them every week, so I thought I'd try and keep it limited for a change. While they really struggled, especially after the goal, to create anything, and they never looked like they were going to equalise at some point, did they, Eric?
I mean, they had a couple nice chances. Cornier had a really nice pass for Lacazette, but I think the issue with this team is that it doesn't really appear that inverted wingers are going to get the job done in this 4-3-3. Valbuena was a tremendous player for Marseille playing a 4-3-3, but he's playing on the right, being able to use his natural foot, and likewise Gezal. We saw Valbuena get a couple nice passes away, but again, with his weaker left foot, he's not going to have the power, the direction, the accuracy that he needs to be at his creative best. And likewise, Gezal. I think that when we saw this 4-3-3 working at its best for Lyon was when we had the likes of Grenier playing on the left and the likes of Gezal or Valbuena on the right. This is what Lyon need to do. This 4-3-3 seems like it's going to pay dividends. Obviously, there's been some issues with Lacazette. His first touch doesn't seem to be quite what it was last season, or even in seasons prior to that. But to bring in the likes of Gezal from the wilderness, as Genesio has done, and to be fair, he's done fairly well. But to play him as this inverted winger in a role he's never really played before, and likewise Grenier, there's not a level of chemistry that I think that's the real issue. I mean, the team last year was fairly settled. There weren't any major injuries, and you had the same 11 players week in, week out for the most part. This season, there's been a huge amount of chopping and changing in attack, whether it's formations, whether it's personnel, and I think that's what it's down to. I think that two things need to happen. One, Genesio needs to realize that, yes, playing a 4-3-3 is the right way forward for this team, but not with inverted wingers. He needs to play the wide attackers on their natural side, and whether that's Grenier, Valbuena, Gezal, Cornier, even Kalulu. And secondly, he needs to not chop and change so much. And the other issue too is if you looked at the way that Lyon approached things when Grenier came on, the team moved a little bit more to a 4-2-3-1, taking Ferry off for Grenier. Grenier moved to a central role. Lacazette was a central striker, and Valbuena and Gezal just dropped a little bit. But after that move, Gezal was invisible. Tolisso was having a harder time getting involved because he had more defensive responsibilities, playing as part of a midfield two with Gonalon. And the tactical nuances of how these players best operate with each other just really seems to be lost on Bruno Genesio at this point in time. So he needs to figure things out in a way that makes sense for the talent he has on the pitch. Yes, the loss of Nabil Fekir is a big blow. Yes, Alexander Lacazette isn't getting it done at the level he was last season. But the bottom line is he's not setting this team up to get the best out of what is still, Grenier, Fekir, Grenier, Valbuena, Lacazette, Sergei Darder, Tolisso. This is a talented group of attacking players. Even young players the likes of Kalulu and Cormier have had their moments. He's not setting this team up to get the best out of them. And it's baffling to me how he's not seeing this and how he's persisting with this blunt, possession-based attacking football that's got no end product. Against Saint-Germain and Marseille, you could see that you could not blame, but you could credit Ruffier Mandanda for strong goalkeeping performances. But Leica had hardly any saves to make. I'm not sure how long it took Lyon to even muster a shot on target in that match. I want to say into the second half, if I recall correctly, and that's unacceptable for a team of the caliber of Lyon's players. Genesio needs to figure this out quickly, or he's going to be joining Fournier on the dole come the end of the season.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you there, Eric, that especially after the goal went in and with those inverted wingers, it was just easy for Basti to just sit in and wait for the players to come and get into the holes that were non-existent because they were filled with Bastia players. I mean, I think Lacazette's struggling because the best work he ever does, especially last season, was getting in behind teams, using his pace, and then creating those one-on-one opportunities in the box. He's not finding the space. No one can find the space. They can't create enough, and that's why they're struggling at the moment. Teams just sit, wait for one chance to counter, score a goal, sit back. It seems seen it against. It was maybe a little bit lucky against Saint-Etienne. Marseille couldn't quite pull it off, but they attempted the same kind of thing, and it must be driving Lyon fans insane that they're seeing the exact same setup against every single team, and they can't work out a way to win. But
right, the definition of insanity.
Yeah, exactly.
Over expecting it to work.
Yeah, it's like watching Manchester United, which isn't very fun for everyone. So
right.
getting to watch them at a weekend and then watching Lyon again, it was like torture a little bit. But we will move on to a team who has improved since the start of the season. Bordeaux. They had a pretty poor first third of the season, but they're now unbeaten in 7, and off of a thumping 4-0 win of Rennes, Willy Sagnol's men are back in the fight for a European place. They've really turned things up in the last few weeks, haven't they?
Incredible. Just watching them over the last few weeks, with the exception of obviously the League Cup game, but certainly in the league, it's just been a complete change of fortune, playing with confidence, playing good football. And it wasn't so long ago that Willy Sagnol was fearing for his job, if you believe what was written in the press. Now, as I said, they're full of confidence of scoring goals, and really look at a really good. If they can keep it up, why can't they challenge for the top 3? Absolutely, it's incredible to see. But it also goes to show that just a small run of form, a few games, and before you know it, you're challenging for Champions League places.
Yeah, and that's the thing at the moment with any club that's in mid-table. A couple of wins, and you're right in there at the moment with it being so tight. But Eric, we mentioned Bordeaux as potentially a Champions League team at the start of the season. We were hyping them up a bit, and they are really starting to pull out. I mean, that win against Rennes was a real statement of intent, wasn't it?
I mean, to be honest with you both, I'm not very high on Bordeaux. Let's be honest. They conceded 7 goals in their last 2 matches prior to this weekend. 5 against Lille, of all teams, in the Coupe de la Ligue semifinals. After Sagnol had put out a fairly strong team, I would argue probably his best 11, with perhaps the exception of Diabate. And then conceded 2 against Nantes, who were again another team not exactly known for their offensive prowess. I think there's still a lot to be worked out with this team. Yeah, it's a fun result. It's a credible result against Rennes. It's something that's going to get the home fans off their seat. But I don't see Bordeaux as a top 3 contender. I think that they're still a lot of issues to sort out defensively. They still need to figure out how things are going to operate creatively now that Khazri's gone. Whether that means a bigger role for the likes of a Thomas Torre or playing the likes of Diego Roland and Adam Unas cutting inside. I mean, there's still a lot that needs to be figured out for this team. For me personally, to see them as a real contender for Champions League spots. Europa League. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to just. I will carry on, but you're saying Europa League. Do you think they can make that?
Sure, I think they're credible contenders for Europa League, but that's only down to the nature of what the table looks like. I mean, let's be honest. Lille are 2 points off. Nantes are 2 points off of sixth. I mean, where's that come from? That's a team. That's a team we could talk about as a surprise. I think that Bordeaux are still at this point too inconsistent. They may have enough to make the Europa League, but I think that we've seen more consistency. Again, consistency is a relative term this season in Ligue 1, but more consistency from the likes of an Angers, a Monaco, a Nice, a Caen, even a Saint-Etienne for Bordeaux to really be a contender for Champions League at this point in time.
Well, the reason I chose this topic initially is I watched Bordeaux against Rennes at the weekend, and I was mightily impressed by the performance. I know the loss to Lille in midweek wasn't ideal to make
I
it
watched
to the
that
topic.
match, so
Yeah.
our perspectives are different.
Exactly. Well, the strange thing is I was going to say why I wanted to interject you, Eric, is the points you made were the things that I saw. I mean, Thomas Torre came on, so he didn't start the game, but he came on and made a real attacking difference in that last 30 minutes. He really added an extra energy to them. Adam Aunas started and was excellent cutting inside, creating chances for them. I thought Diego Roland had his best game that I've seen this season, scoring, creating. Really, really looked back at his best. And Sheikh Diabate scored 2 nice goals. Both, again, him being there and being a threat at the top of that sort of potential front three were really, really impressive going forward. I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, watch the 4th goal. I think Diego Roland finishes, but it's absolutely no, it's Thomas Torres. Apologies, but there's some absolutely beautiful, intricate play between Thomas Torre, Onas, and Roland to create the goal, and it's also a bit shambolic defending, but at the same time that you could see the confidence coming through them from the goals that they scored past. There's a really impressive display as well from a young defensive midfielder I've not seen before. Is a Valentin Vada who made his first start in that game, I believe, in the league at least, and he was really impressive in the defensive midfield, and that shield really helped Bordeaux. I think that's a place, like you say, defensively they've struggled, and I thought he was excellent. I believe he was only 18, but for 18 years old as a defensive midfielder, I thought he was terrific. But much like you mentioned, Eric, I think the loss of Wabi Khazri was a real worry. And Lee, do you think they have enough to deal with the loss of a player like that?
Is your question in terms of pushing for Europe?
Let's say Europa League, yeah.
Europa League. I think it will be difficult. I think it's going to be difficult for them. Obviously, not taking anything away from the performance at the weekend, but he was a big player, a big player for them. I've watched him quite a few times this season, and he's made things happen. Anything that was good from an attacking sense he was involved in, chipped in with the odd goal. They'll miss him. They'll miss him massively. And I hope he does really well at Sunderland. I really do. As for Europa League, again, as I said before, definite opportunity to do it, especially with the form of Saint-Etienne, Lyon and Marseille, those teams that you expect to be filling those positions. And with those teams down in 8th, 9th, 10th position, you'd expect that there's going to be 1 or 2 teams really pushing forward now and trying to claim those last European places. Bordeaux have got a fantastic chance. I just don't think they'll do it this year. I think that I don't think they've got enough. I'm not sure they'll have the consistency to do it, and I fully expect those the Marseilles and the Lyons to put a bit of a run together and to get themselves a bit further up the league and probably claim those last places towards the end. Again, a point that Eric made, I think defensively there's still work to be done. Although I do think they've done a really good piece of business with Mathieu Debuchy. I'm not 100%. Is that gone through?
Yeah, it's gone through in the last.
It's gone through. That has now, yeah. Although I do think that's a fantastic piece of business on transfer deadline day. Well, I still think there's work to be done defensively at Bordeaux. So I think they might just miss out.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good piece of business. We were talking in the summer, Eric, when they lost. His name escapes me. The right back. Yeah, when they lost Mariano, we were worried for them in that position. I think Debuchy's really good cover. Moving on very quickly to Rennes in that game, Eric. To me, they had the same mistakes of early of not being able to decide what wingers will work. Was this a real backward step? This kind of loss?
Yeah, especially if you consider that I think this was a pretty strong team that Corbis was fielding. Mexer was back. This is a player who's been missing for quite a while. Has been pretty important, but the likes of Quintero, Silla, Intap, CO. This was a strong team, and it was, I think for me, a little frustrating from a Rennes perspective that they couldn't get things done a little more cohesively in attack. I still think that again, it pains me to remember this, but the best I've seen Rennes look this season was when they played the 3-4-3 against Lyon and destroyed them. I know Ludovic Ball was a big part of that, given his energy and crossing ability, but I still think that's their best way forward because it gives them that much more flexibility in wide areas and allows the strikers to have a little bit more of a free roll. You could play the likes of an Intep and a Dembele together, or Intep off on the wing, or Quintero in behind, and and allow those players to have a little bit more movement in central areas, and you'll have the support of the wing backs, whether that be Danze and Mbenge, or Ball and Morera once Ball returns to health. There's a lot of good options there. Mehdi Zefan has had his moments as well, but I think that Rennes setting up in this 4-2-3-1, I don't think gives enough to let the players have the space they need to cut inside. Particularly the likes of Intap and Grosicki or Pedro Henrique, I think are really at their best when they've got a little bit more space to work in to cut inside and to be supported by the fullbacks. Danze and Mbenge are fine players, but I don't think they have quite the same motor going forward, being played as true fullbacks as opposed to wingbacks, were that to be the case. So if Corbis wants to persist in this 4-2-3-1, I think he needs to take a long look at it and see, how much freedom that gives his attacking players. Because I think that to me is what's really missing. Obviously Montagnier's lack of consistency was his undoing. Corbis seems a little bit more resolute in terms of setting up his team formation-wise, but this just doesn't seem like it's the best approach.
No, and I'll be always a champion for young players, but I was disappointed to see not only Dembele on the bench. I know he's 18, he can't play every game, but he came on with about half an hour to go, and they were already 2-0 down, and already really, really struggling. And when he came on, he added some impetus, but there's only so much you can do when your team's already down. But again, it seems to be that inconsistency of choosing wingers that's pulling Rennes down a little bit. But we will move on to the real surprise package in Liga Angers, and they managed to pull off a quite stunning result in the end at the weekend as they saw off Monaco in a really emphatic 3-0 win. Lee, is that possibly their most impressive result of a already terrific season?
I think so. Yeah, I think that was a real statement sent out, and I think it was more impressive because it came off the back of an absolute mauling in Paris. And let's be honest, nobody's really done that to Angers this year. They've not really conceded many goals, but they took a real beating from PSG. But to bounce back and show that kind of character, and to then come back and play against Monaco, who obviously were in second place. It was a fantastic result, absolutely fantastic. They deserved it from start to finish. Impressive. Listen, Angers are not everybody's cup of tea in terms of how they play football, but they play to their strengths. They work hard. They're a great unit. They've got some really talented footballers in that team, and I think everything just clicked on Saturday, and certainly made the rest of Liga stand up and take notice. I mean, we're forgetting here that this is a team that's just been promoted in third place from Ligue 2. They've come up and they've done ever so well. They lost their goalkeeper recently, and they've just carried on, and they're doing such a great job, doing themselves proud. And it's a little bit like Leicester City in England. We've got a team here who could potentially go to the Champions League, very unfancied, but they're still there. They're hanging in there, and they're doing a great job. And certainly, even if PSG do go on to sweep up all trophies, for me, Angers have been one of the most impressive sides in Liga this season.
Yeah, and I have to agree with that. I mean, they remind me a little bit, it might be a bit of an extension to say, but I always think they're a bit of a poor man's Atletico Madrid. They work extremely hard defensively and push teams to a limit, and you really have to earn a win. And I think PSG's win against them was really, really terrific. But Eric, it was great for them to bounce back. Can they catch Monaco into second?
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look at their fixture list. I mean, they've got a trip to Reims coming up. That's probably a good bet for points. They've got Lyon at home. Rennes, they're away to Rennes. I mean, those are, given those teams' recent forms and home form in the case of Rennes, there's every chance that they can push on from this. I mean, they're in control of their own destiny, and they've got PSG out of the way. They've got Monaco out of the way in the last 2 weeks. They've already played Caen twice, so now they can have a little bit of a chance to sort of impose their style on the way around them. And I also want to mention before we move off of Angers, I think they've done really well in the window. I think that obviously losing the likes of Kamara and Boutel was a bit of a blow for them, but the replacement moves that they've made have been good. I think that Saïd Benrahma, I think, is a really nice signing. I think he looked fantastic against Bordeaux in the Cup. A very tricky player, drawing a lot of fouls in his role. I think provides a little bit of balance to Keke Fonfon on the opposite flank. They can switch flanks, and they can really get at teams in the way that a lot of the rest of Angers' players can't as well. I think that the acquisition of the former Lyon striker Mohamed Yattara, I think, looks a real trick. He's got already a goal and an assist in 4 matches. I think that he was a player. I think Lyon. I'm not saying he's going to be a world beater, but I think he's certainly a useful Ligue 1 player. I think he showed that in his brief appearances with Lyon last season. So this is a team that's being incredibly canny in the way that they're not only approaching things tactically in the way that they play, but also in the players that they're acquiring. They want a cohesive, coherent method of approaching their play, and it shows. I mean, yes, there's a bit of sameness. Okay, Manjani swings in the free kick, and somebody heads it home, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact is, it's remarkably effective, and this team, top down, is performing really effectively. And as the window's coming to a close here now, and it looks like they're really key players, and that to me is the defensive partnership of Traore and Thomas, Ndoye, Saiss, Mangani, Keke Fonfon, all to be staying at the club, barring some last minute change that Angers are really well set up for the run-in, and I think that it'd be fantastic. I'm not really high on them getting into the Champions League, but I think it'd be really fun to see them in the Europa League, a la Guingamp last season.
Yeah, and a quick mention for Pierrick Capello's come into the side since they sold Abdul Kamara to Derby. He's been terrific. I mean, he scored 3 goals in 4 appearances since the winter break. It's great to see a team that has that next man step up ability. So really terrific for them and carrying on, even though they lost a couple of players. Just very quickly before we head into our transfer talk, Gazalek, after their 11-game unbeaten run, came to a close a couple of weeks ago. Were brought back down to earth with that loss to Rennes, and then were crumbled by Montpellier. They're only now 3 points above the drop zone, Lee. Should they be panicking now?
To be honest, I think anybody down in that area should certainly keep one eye open. It was disappointing, but listen, the run was never going to last to the end of the season. But what they've done has been pretty incredible. At the start of the season, they couldn't buy a win. It was a pretty tough introduction to Liga, and to be honest, I think that they've gathered and gained a few admirers over the last few weeks. Not just the way they've played, but also in terms of the football romantics. Just seeing them, beat some of the real top clubs in the league. What they need to do, what Angers have done, they need a quick response, and they need to get back to winning ways as soon as possible. I don't see why they can't get another winning run together. They've got some good players down there. It's an easy place to go, especially when they're at home. Very small, tight ground. Good, passionate support. I hope they get out of trouble. They're a likable club. They've got some good players. They've got a good coach, and resources are very tight down there. And it'll be again another real success story of the clubs that have been promoted if they can get out of trouble.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll be a good acclamation to why 3 teams should go up and 3 teams to go down. Eric, just very quickly on Gazalek, they really need to keep their home form up. I mean, this loss at home was a real disappointment with someone in and around them, but that will be key for them staying up, won't it?
Absolutely, and what can you say? Brian Dabo has the match of his life. Dabo's a good player, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. That's probably the best that I've ever seen him play. I mean, from the highlights at least. Really impressive performance from him. And Montpellier, new manager bounce. Yeah, suck it up. I mean, this is honestly, if you look back at the results from Gazalek, this is really the first time they've been thumped. They haven't lost by more than 2 goals all season. So they've been competitive, and I don't think this is a team. I think this is a team that has the character to put this one in the books. They're away to Nantes midweek, but their next 3 matches are at home to Guingamp, at home to Troyes, and away to Toulouse. Get 7 or 8, or get 7 or 8. Get 6, 7 points from those 3 matches, and I think their safety is as good as sealed against their relegation rivals.
And it will be. I have a feeling that Gazalek can get a little bit more about them again and avoid the drop, but it's very tight down there. That's the problem at the moment. So that ends our first hour of today's special. So Eric, you're going to jump on the transfer bandwagon and keep us up to date with any very late moves as we start to enter the final hour. And we also welcome to the show Goal.com's Mohammed Ali again. Welcome, Mel.
Hello, thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's very good to have you as always. We're going to do some initial reaction to some deals that have gone through or have been rumoured in the last couple of hours. The first one I want you to get your thoughts on, Mo. I'm assuming quite a few people want to get your thoughts on is Stephen Fletcher's loan move to Marseille.
Yeah, well, I've had a couple of hours to think over that one, to be honest. When I first saw it this morning, initial reaction was a bit of a shock, but over the past 31 days and indeed the last 5 months, Marseille have desperately needed a striker, and that's been without question. But the 2 names that we've been linked with on deadline day have been really, really uninspiring. But the fact remains, they are still backup. You know, Michy Batshuayi is the number one striker. Marseille do need somebody, as will be the case tomorrow, somebody that needs to play up front if Batshuayi is either injured or suspended. The pity is, it's not some of the interesting names that have moved across Europe this January, like Giuseppe Rossi, Alessio Cerci, and Christian Tello, even names that have been linked with Marseille in the past, and names that we've been linked with over the last few months, like Marcus Berg of Panathinaikos and Seydou Doumbia. But it's in fact two strikers who have really failed to ignite the Premier League this season. And it really just goes to show, you know, what direction are we going in? I mean, they are still backups, but for Marseille to be really playing or bidding for cast-offs in the Premier League, Peter Odemwingie, the other player that we've been linked with, hasn't scored. Well, for the last, I don't even know what he's been up to for the last 2 years. And Stephen Fletcher, who's signing tonight, has scored the same number of goals as Michy Batshuayi, but in the last 3 years this season. Or, I mean, let me rephrase that. Batshuayi has scored the same number of goals as Fletcher as in the past 3 seasons. So, you know, for 5 months, since September the 1st, since I last was on this show, and the Lamela debacle and the failure to sign a striker then, we've had 5.5 months to find an adequate replacement. And for it to go all the way to deadline day, and for us to sign Stephen Fletcher, it's quite something.
Yeah, it has been an interesting day for Marseille fans, especially when it looked like Peter Odemwingie was on his classic, let's get on a plane, let's get on a train, let's get on an automobile, let's get down to the ground.
I'll be very honest, and I'll say Fletcher, I'll take Fletcher 10 times out of 10 over Peter Odemwingie. So, you know, when it was these two touted today, I kind of thought, you know, maybe no striker is better than those two. But Stephen Fletcher is a Scottish international striker. He has a good, interesting profile, and France could be the place where he could reignite his career.
Yeah, and just as we speak, Who Scored have tweeted about Stephen Fletcher's strengths and weaknesses. Strengths, none. Weaknesses, holding on to the ball. And he likes to do flick-ons. That tickled me a little bit. I thought I'd add that one in. Lee, what do you think for the deal to Stephen Fletcher to Marseille? He will pretty much be a backup to Michy Batshuayi, but do you think he could be an interesting foil to the Belgian?
It's a very interesting one. It's like you say, it's one that I don't think any of us seen coming. Stephen Fletcher, I mean, I've seen a lot of him in the Premier League. He's a hard-working guy, happy to run into the channels. You know, works hard, brings other players into play. I'm not sure he's what Marseille fans really wanted or needed. For backup, again, toward the end of the season, it might not be the worst move. And as Mo said, if you've got the option of Odemwingie or Fletcher, you take Fletcher hands down. I think Marseille have probably stalled quite a lot in terms of getting themselves a striker. I think there's better strikers out there for that huge club, and it seems like it's just a last minute panic to get somebody in, get bodies in. The best way Fletcher can, I suppose the best thing that Fletcher can do is net a goal on Sunday in his debut. It wouldn't be a bad start for him, but again, it's whether. I think the main thing from this point of view is that Marseille have probably stalled a little bit in terms of what they wanted. I can't see that Michel was the number one target for Michel, to be honest with you. I think that they could have done better business.
No, yeah. If I could just cut in there, I mean, Lee, you're right. I mean, Michel came into a press conference today and said that he didn't make the decision to sign Florian Thauvin. He's been saying over the last few weeks, I have no say in transfers whatsoever. So that just goes to show, really, you know, this has all been concocted by the board. And that's kind of what annoys me a little bit. The coach has had no say, and Marseille have sold all their best players. They've generated about 35 million euros in transfer revenue, and there's 6 loans. Well, Fletcher would be the 6th. There's 6 loans and numerous free deals that we made last season. So I'm surprised that we haven't gone in with a transfer for an experienced European player, there are plenty of them, and there are plenty who would, in maybe lower leagues, in Holland, in Eastern Europe, etc., that would kill to play for a great club such as Marseille. So it worries me a little bit that this is the direction that we're going into.
It is a strange one, and it does sound to me like a higher ups move. Who can we get? Who desperately can we get? All right, Stephen Fletcher in the end, who's barely played for Sunderland this season, in a side that can't score goals. So it doesn't really shine the greatest light, does it?
It's a great deal for him, and it's up to him whether he can do well at Marseille. Endear himself to the fans. But if he will find himself in against much bigger opponents in the Europa League, against Bilbao in European competition. I'm not sure if it's his first time, and also playing against PSG next weekend, for example. But the problem is not Fletcher himself; it's what he represents. I'm sure he will work hard, and he will take this chance with both hands, and I'm sure that come the summer he would have enjoyed the fact that he's played at his biggest club to date. But the concern's not with Fletcher himself, it's with the signing and the process of the management of the board, and that's where a lot of fans' anger is directed towards.
But he has scored in the Premier League before. There's no doubt that he can possibly do something like that again. An interesting move that sort of happened on this final day, because it seemed like Mathieu Debuchy was going to go to Aston Villa for all of the money, but that collapsed and ended up going to Bordeaux. Lee, you were mentioning earlier that sounds like a good move. He's done it to try and get some game time before Euro 2016. It could really be a positive signing for that club, can't it?
I think this is a really good deal, potentially for Bordeaux, if he does show his potential. Now, he's been on the fringes of the national squad. I mean, this is a huge 6 months now for Mathieu Debuchy. Not had any game time at Arsenal, and I think he should be credited really with a really good decision from my point of view, with his choice of going to Bordeaux over a relegation battle with Aston Villa. I was recently at the Aston Villa Leicester City game. My son's a huge season ticket holder at Leicester City, and the club, the Aston Villa, is shot from forward line to goalkeeper, and just looking at the lack of confidence within the team, the lack of direction. I think the move to Bordeaux would signify a more positive outcome for him over and the move to Aston Villa. I think Bordeaux, as we spoke about earlier, are really on a good upturn of form, and Willy Sagnol's certainly got his team playing. There's a good place for him in that team. Again, need a little bit of strength defensively, and he's going to be playing in Ligue 1, which obviously Didier Deschamps will be keeping a close eye on that. I think it's a really good move for him. And it's certainly a good decision from him and his agent to make that move to Bordeaux.
Just wanted to jump in here with a couple bits of news. Speaking of Marseille, they have activated the buyout clause for Remy Cabella. He is now a Marseille player. He's moved from Newcastle permanent, and also Caen are in the process of signing Ivorian winger Christian Kouakou from Tours for a fee between 750,000 and 1 million euros. And Yaya Sanogo has joined Charlton on loan for the remainder of this season.
So steady decline for Yaya Sanogo. But very quickly on that, Mo, that you've just heard, Remy Cabella's activated the buyout option on him. Is that a good move?
I think it's a fantastic move. And when he signed in the summer, signing to replace Thauvin, I had a few reservations of whether he could be the same player that he was when he left Ligue 1 a couple of seasons back. But after a slow start, he's been really impressive in the 10 role. He's worked well with George Kevin and Kudu and Bouna Sarr, and he's just having such a really good time in Marseille. And I'm sure the fans and the other players and the management believed that as well. It was always likely that he was going to sign a permanent deal, and I'm very happy to hear that, because obviously the danger is in the summer that all these loan signings would result in all these players going back to their parent clubs, and we'll have half a squad missing. So at least there's one to look forward to, and I hope he continues what's been a great start to his career at Marseille.
Yeah, carry on, Eric. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I've been really impressed with him. He was never a player that I thought showed a whole lot of work ethic defensively, but I think he's taken a page out of Dimitri Payet's book. I thought Payet was really impressive in tracking back last season. I think that Cabella has really impressed this season. He showed a lot of effort in terms of tracking back, and I think that's perhaps for me a sign of a newfound maturity for this club. I think his career had been somewhat of an upward trajectory, if you will, moving from Montpellier to Newcastle, and I think having to quote unquote drop back down to Ligue 1, I think has maybe made him reassess his priorities a little bit. And he's applying himself a bit more than he perhaps has during his time in England.
And it'll be interesting to see them Marseille keep a player that, like you say, on loan initially, keep a good one, sticking with so many slightly poor decisions on loan, but we'll mention those maybe a little bit later. Just wanted to get your thoughts, Mo, on Abdoulaye Doucouré, who's moved from Rennes to Watford and then heading out on loan to Granada. He's a player that Watford fans won't see until the summer. What do you think about him, his attributes, and what he could bring to the club in the future?
Well, I think Doucouré is a good player. I don't think he's flashy, but I think Watford are signing a player based on his potential rather than what he can do now. And I think that's what's preempted the move to Granada instead. At Rennes, I think he's had one or two flashes, of potential, and he's an interesting player in the midfield. But what has led Watford to sign him for a club record fee? That's what I really don't understand here. And I don't really understand for Doucouré as well why he would kind of, stop his development at Rennes, and go to the Premier League. Well, now La Liga as it is. It's kind of a dangerous move career-wise, but of course, given the current climate, it's one that you expect a lot of French Ligue 1-based players to take.
It is an interesting move and one to follow, certainly as he's been out of that Rennes squad recently. Onto some speculation rather than a move that's happening. Monaco's Radamel Falcao, who's on loan at Chelsea, his agent, I can't remember his name off the top of my head now. It's escaping me, but they're both searching for a move away potentially to either Atletico Madrid or Valencia. Lee, do you think that's a good move for him and for Monaco to get him playing games again?
With Falcao,
Yeah.
do you know what this is? I'm a huge fan of Falcao. When we go back to, the Porto days, the Atletico Madrid days, just one of the most feared strikers on the planet. It's really sad to see, what happened since obviously the knee injury in Monaco, and obviously what happened going to Manchester United and Chelsea. It's very reminiscent of Fernando Torres when he went to Chelsea, and Atletico Madrid might looked in and came and rescued him from that hell there. I still think the real Radamel Falcao is in there somewhere. And I still think he needs the right move. And I don't think the right move was England for him at the time. It got him away out of Monaco, and obviously with Monaco's financial situation, it worked out good for Monaco. I think that maybe a move to La Liga will be the right setting for him. I'm not sure why he'd go to Atletico, go back there. I'm not sure if he did go back there, I'm not sure what the plans of Diego Simeone are with him, especially with having Jackson Martinez. He's still got Fernando Torres. And obviously there's links with Diego Costa as well. Antoine Griezmann scoring every game pretty much at the moment. So I'm not sure where he's going to fit in if that was to happen.
It is an interesting one. It does sound like at this moment in time nothing's really moving, but they are desperate to try and find him somewhere to play football. So Monaco can potentially sell him at some point if they can. Mo, just very quickly, another move that looks like it'll probably go through in the last minute is former Marseille man Gianelli Mbula to Stoke City. Just give the Stoke fans a bit of an idea of what they could be getting.
Well, he's a great young player. Hasn't worked out at Porto, but if the Stoke fans watch, how he was in the 2014-15 season under Marcelo Bielsa, they'll find a really complete midfielder, great box-to-box play, great tackling them as well, and he likes to get forward very, very often. He likes to supplement the attacks, and he just worked amazingly well in the system that we had last season, especially in the first half. I would even go as far as saying he was the second most important player after Dimitri Payet in the Marseille squad last season. In terms of how it's happened, I haven't really watched him at Porto, but I understand that he hasn't really played very often. And one thing that I understand about Mbula and the way that he's worked with Eli Bolt, Jose Nigo, Bielsa, and now Lopetegui in Porto is that to function, he really needs a coach's love and affection. He didn't get it in the France under-21 squad where he was briefly ejected by Willy Sagnol. But you could see that Bielsa saw Mbula as the cornerstone of his midfield, and with that affection and giving him specific roles to play, he really blossomed. At Porto, he hasn't really had that, and he said, well, not him himself, his father, his agent, has said that Mbula hasn't really had the development, and the manager hasn't really focused on him specifically, as was the case last year at Marseille. Whether Mark Hughes will be able to do that, whether he'll be able to make same sacrifices for him, that's we'll have to wait and see. But the fact underlying is that clubs know what they're getting in Mbula, and that's why they're prepared to pay big bucks. The system at Porto didn't really work. The climate didn't work, and Mbula's father has said that it was just a wrong move. But in the Premier League, where the style of play is very, very comfortable for Mbula to thrive in, fast attack, very technical, very physical, he'll blossom. And at Stoke City, which I think they're trying to get rid of the image of physicality that they've had over the last few years, and they're trying to move into an attractive team. I think this is a wonderful signing, and I for one hope Mbula does really, really well at Stoke.
Yeah, I think he gives him the real grit in the middle of the park that they're probably lacking. I mean, we can all say Jeff Cameron's a half decent player, but I don't think he's a magnificent defensive midfielder, and I think or a distributor from that position. Whereas Mbula's an upgrade. I think personally on both accounts there, and it's an interesting signing for me for Stoke. But Mo, I do want to talk to you obviously about Marseille's window or overall. It's been stressful as always, linked with every player under the sun. How have they done this month overall?
In terms of the off the field or on it?
You go with both. Go with both.
Okay. Well, on the field, too many draws, but I think that the team have found a little bit of an edge. Maybe even I'll go as far as saying a little never say die attitude. There's great atmosphere in the training ground, and I think the current crop of players, they've formed a really, really good bond with each other. And it's really good to see that, for example, Mandanda has remained. The son of Diarra has become such an integral part. The likes of Nkudu and Sarr, who, I wrote off as, I'll put my hands up and I say that I wrote off as, just backups and last resorts in the summer, have actually become the team's most integral players this month. Cabela has come around. Rolando even, who I did not think that would pick up a Man of the Match award, but he has on Friday, and he's been really, really important. But we're just lacking that killer instinct. I think as other players have improved, Batshuayi has waned a little bit, and that's probably because of the fact that he's been the only striker, 32 games he's played, and the fact that Marseille still remain unbeaten away from home, and since the last Clasico on October the 4th, they still remain unbeaten. after within 90 minutes, save for that Coupe de la Ligue defeat after extra time to Toulouse. But we're still not kicking on. We're missing too many chances. Michel is not able to function. He's not able to develop a plan B. So on the field, it's pretty hard to say where Marseille are at. The league table does not lie 10th. But if you take the last 10 games into account, Marseille are the only team, aside from PSG, that are unbeaten. But then 3 wins and 7 draws don't really, show or highlight a team in form. And off the field, well, the transfer window has been another mess like last season, even though it hasn't been precipitated with a large number of exits. This window was supposed to be the rejuvenation, adding 2 or 3 key players that will help Marseille achieve their season aims, whether it's going to be going as far as possible in the Europa League, winning the Coupe de France, or finishing at least 5th or in the Europa League places. Marseille have had 5 months to dust themselves off from September the 1st and what happened last summer to find and analyze who they need. And again, looking at today, it's been an absolute shambles. Signing a player who left only 6 months ago anyway, and bringing back on a free, and then signing a Premier League reject. So it just goes to show. The management, the hierarchy, Lebrun and the other board of directors, they've been really, really shoddy. And I've been thinking, and also I've been looking at and talking about on Twitter, that I personally, I'm inclined to believe that they can do little more than strip the club of the assets, so to speak, and make Marseille into a self-sustainable club. Last season we did not qualify for the Champions League, therefore the players had to be sold, and to counter a €30 million deficit, the club had to sell 2 key players and replace them with players that did not cost much at all. The biggest cost was Ocampo, 7 million, and he's been awful. And again, it's been another low-cost transfer window this time round. And if Marseille don't qualify again for the Champions League this season, the same will happen to Batshuayi, to Nkudu, to Mandanda, to Nkulu this summer. And then the cycle just continues and continues. We've got an owner who's worth 6 billion euros who's uninterested. She's about to give birth to twins in April. So you can imagine that, a new start would mean selling the club, but no one wants to buy. Therefore, Vincent Lebrun and his colleagues are working on making the club as attractive to investors as possible, retaking back the ticket sales from the supporters groups, ensuring that the team has little debt. Marseille are notorious for having significant debt in the last couple of years, debt that's always been written off through the Champions League or through Margarita Lewis-Dreyfus dipping into her bank account. But that's no longer an option. So it kind of leaves Marseille in a limbo, and the desperation is just laid bare with days like today, where it's just cheap, low-cost, solutions to long-standing problems.
Yeah, and that always makes a club look attractive, doesn't it? But
yeah.
to put a little bit of a positive spin on it, Lee, there were worries that Marseille could lose the likes of Steve Mandanda during this window. Is it positive that they really didn't lose anyone during January?
I think so. I think, bearing in mind the way the season's gone for Marseille, a lot of unrest, obviously, with Bielsa going early in the season. It was important that they kept hold of their talisman, and obviously with Mandanda being their captain, he's a guy who's been there, for many years now. Certainly one of the leaders within the dressing room. It was really important that they kept hold of him. There's a lot of big rebuilding job needs doing at Marseille, but it needs to start now. Obviously, as Mo said, this transfer window has been a real disappointment, really. And for the noise of Liga, you want to see Marseille up there and challenging PSG, because that adds a little bit of extra spice, certainly, ahead of the game on Sunday. But I think that going forward now, like you say, there's unrest in the boardroom. Things have got to change for that club. They're a huge, huge club, the biggest club in France. And it's sad to see where they are at the moment, what's going on at Marseille. There's unrest, and Michel, obviously, as Mo said, he's not really having too much opinion in terms of signings. It just seems a real mess there. And I believe, I think Mo could probably clear this up with me. They've not won at home for, is it 4 or 5 months now?
5 months. Five months. 5 months. In a couple of weeks, actually. Actually, no. Hold on.
Yeah, I think it was roughly.
Yeah, 5 months.
That's an incredible statistic for a club of that size, and with a stadium and an unbelievable fan base that they've got. Incredible statistic. I hope Marseille can, start to rebuild now. They need to do that, and they need to keep hold of those, their big players, the Mondondas, going forward.
Absolutely, Lee. Totally agree. But I doubt it's going to happen. Marseille do need to be strong for France, for Europe as well. We're not talking about a mid-sized club here. We're talking about a club with a significant fan base, massive stadium, and global recognition. But until there is, I believe, until there is an investment from a new majority shareholder, from a new owner, it's just not going to happen. It would have to take a season of seismic proportions from a pretty weak team to qualify for the Champions League. And when the Champions League is attained, then we're just going to have to hope and pray for significant transfers. The last time that happened in 2013-14, where Marseille played absolutely diabolical football, but somehow finished second in the spring of 2013. It was followed up with signing Sabah Khalifa, Gianni Mbula, Florian Thauvin, young players or cheap League One strikers to play in the Champions League. It was ridiculous decision making, and that's cost the club 40 million euros. So, in the summer when Mandanda leave and Kulu leave, those are almost certain. We just have to wait and see. We're just gonna have to hope and pray.
Yeah, I hope and pray there's not days like today again. That's the hope, anyway. Just very quickly, a word on Wabi Kazri who's headed to Sunderland this week. We wanted to get your guys' thoughts on what the fans can expect. To start with you, Mo. What will Kazri bring to the Premier League?
He's a very creative midfielder, and I like him a lot, Kazri. And he hasn't really impressed for Bordeaux in the last couple of months, but he has had a major effect. He's still the club's joint top scorer, and the most assist maker, which kind of underlines his creativity. He's very pacey, and he looks for the killer pass. He has a bit of a poor man's pie, a little bit, about him. But in Sunderland, in Sunderland, he'll have an impact, I believe, and he's a hard worker and a determined player who really puts in the effort. So whether he can prosper and thrive in a relegation fight, he's arriving in Sunderland, over an average last couple of weeks. So it's difficult to tell whether he'll make an immediate impact. And obviously Sunderland are a bit short for time in their relegation fight. But he's a player I really, really like. And again, I just wish he didn't move to England, to be honest, and he'd reconsider joining Marseille or Lyon or Monaco. But that's the trend these days.
Stay in Liga. We like watching you. Lee, Kazri will bring a real creative sense to a Sunderland team that are struggling for goals at the moment, won't he?
Yeah, I think he will. I like him as a player. I watched him various times over the last couple of seasons, and I like what he brings. His energy, his creativity. He can move. He passes. He moves. He's a good player. I'm disappointed with the move to Sunderland. Being honest with you, I would have liked him to have gone to a better footballing team. Unfortunately, in my head, I'm thinking something similar. To a situation with Thauvin, with Remy Cabella, where he's going to go into a team that's fighting relegation. There's a lot of not so great football played at Sunderland, with all respect, especially with the Sam Allardyce team. There's a lot of long ball football played there, and he's a better technical footballer than that for me. I would have liked him to have gone to a better footballing team. And to be honest with you, again, touching on what Mo said, I think a move to a Marseille would have been a better move than him going to the Premier League in England.
money talks at the end of the day. I think
It
money
certainly
talks.
does.
Absolutely.
And as it always does. Mo, just before you go, I just wanted to hear what do you think is your best move in Liga this transfer window?
Well,
there isn't many to pick from.
There
I know
isn't
that.
many to pick from at all. But one move that struck me as pretty interesting was Bernardoni to Bordeaux. He's a young goalkeeper that's got a lot of potential, and a lot of clubs have been looking at him. There were earlier reports that Chelsea were about to put a bid in, but obviously, given the goalkeeping situation in Bordeaux, where Carrasco is out for the rest of the season, thrusting a young goalkeeper ahead of another young goalkeeper who they started last week but suffered a big defeat with, will be very, very interesting. And I think this might be the year where Bernardoni, kind of rivals the likes of Lafont in Toulouse and Donnarumma in AC Milan. It's really, really good to see these young goalkeepers being given a chance. We rarely see that in other positions as well. You don't really see 18-year-old defenders, 18-year-old midfielders, and 18-year-old strikers being undisputed number one at a really, a relatively big-sized club. So I'll be, that's a really, really good deal. Maybe for the player, and it could certainly be for Bordeaux. They might have a replacement, a ready-made replacement in Carrasco, for Carrasco, when he gets on, and that's going to be one that I'm definitely going to be watching.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting one to pick, Mo. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and those fans at home, always follow him on Twitter at @MohamedAli_93. He's always a great read, especially for Marseille. Thanks again, Mo.
Thanks very much, guys.
Right, and as Mo leaves us, we now welcome in Will Gain, Ligue 2 analyst from Football Radar. Welcome to the show, Will. Sorry, welcome again to the show, Will. Sorry, I muted your mic then.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, lovely.
We'll start with some deals that have gone through initially, if that's all right. Papa San from Bourg-en-Bresse has gone to Caen in a completed deal. What's your thoughts on that one?
I think it's a really good move for the club. First and foremost, it's by far and away the smallest club in Ligue 2 after coming up from National last year. They've got by far and away the smallest budget in the league. They've got, I think, about 3,000 fans. This is their first professional season ever. And I think this is also the first time that they've ever had an exchange of money for a transfer. So just for the club itself, it's a great move. And also the fact that he's gone to Caen on initial deal till 2020, but he'll be loaned back for the remainder of the season, which is huge for Bourg because at the moment they're really, really enjoying a good season. They up until a couple of months ago, where they've just sort of fell off a little bit in recent weeks with their forms a bit up and down, but up until a couple of months ago, they were right up there. They kept winning. I always say to people who ask me, if people ever do ask me about Ligue 2, it's Bourg are kind of like the Wigan or the Blackpool who were in the Premier League. They just had like a gun-ho style, and they just go for it, and it's really entertaining to watch. And that's why I think this amount of money, I think it's in the region of about €500,000. That being handed over to such a small club like Bourg is really good for them long term.
Yeah, and it's great to hear a club that's not on that sort of financial footing get that kind of money. But for Sané himself, say for next year for Caen, what will he bring to the table?
Well, he's powerful. He's a big guy. He's a really, really good finisher. The thing about Sané that I've noticed this season is that in a team like Bourg, if he goes missing, he really does nothing else apart from score. He'll often have games where he will literally do nothing else, and then he gets a chance and scores. There was an opportunity a couple of weeks ago. I think it was last week against Valencia, and he was given for offside. He had a great chance, but he didn't know it was offside. And he just smashed it home, and you just saw he's really got. I think he's about 24, and he's got raw talent in front of goal. A few people that I've spoken to, a few fans of Bourg, just said there's questions about his mental side of the game, but I'm sure when he does go to Liga, that'll come on leaps and bounds because he'll realise he'll have to conduct himself in a completely different manner. I think at Bourg is very, very much like a family environment. He probably gets away with quite a lot because he's such a big player for him. And I think it was always agreed that he would leave at the end of the season. He'd had an option to stay on, but I think he was always going to leave just because he knew he could go on to Liga. So I think, yeah, if he applies himself, then he can definitely score goals in Liga because obviously scoring the amount of goals he has done in National and in Ligue 2, usually there's that natural progression. So, yeah, I think it's definitely something it's a good move for Caen, but it might take some time just to adapt to the new league.
Yeah, and it's great to hear a deal that really works out for both clubs as well. Another deal that's gone through in the last couple of hours is Cedric Carrasco's brother, Johan Carrasco from Metz, joining Reims. What can you tell us about him?
Well, I was just at work a couple of hours ago with my friend who's the Ligue 1 analyst, and we were both just shocked by this. He's third choice at Metz, behind the impressive Thomas Didion, and then you've got another guy called Oberhauser. And Carrasco really has been the guy that's not been on the bench the whole season. So to see this move, we were really stunned. I mean, I don't think he's young. As I say, I don't know too much about him. I think he's 27 or 28. Obviously, a younger brother of Carrasco at Bordeaux. So I think it's just purely a backup signing, but it was a very odd one, and we saw it come through. It just came out of the woodwork. And yeah, I guess a good move for him, because maybe now he'll get more football than he was at Metz. But yeah, very, very odd one.
Yeah, very strange to hear a third choice goalkeeper make all the way to a step up to a struggling team. Sticking with Reims, and they were pretty close to signing Red Star's Naim Sliti. How vital will he be for the Ligue 2 club now he's staying?
Yeah, I was tweeting last night just when I saw the news break, and I was shocked because it came out of nowhere. I always thought that the thing with a club like Red Star, again, they've got a certain way they play. They're very defensive. The reason why they went on such a good unbeaten run is because they're defensive. They have a solid base at the back. They've not conceded many goals since they arrested the initial slump that they had when they came up. But what they have is a very settled front three. They've got a guy who I didn't really know much about. I think they signed from the Swiss league, Ngama Como. That's a probably very poor pronunciation, but they've got him, and then the legendary Hamid Bouatsa. So we all know about him, and he's in his sort of later years now. I think he's 30 and Slitty's 23, and they're both very tricky, very powerful direct runners. So what they have in those three is a good understanding going forward, and usually when they do have match winners, it's one of those three. Slitty's form of late has kind of tailed off. He started the season really well, and he's always been tipped to be the one guy from Red Star that you could see going on to greater things. But definitely really important for them to hold on to him, because he does, even if he doesn't assist or get a goal, everyone on an opposition team will double up on him, and just his presence gives Red Star a certain edge when they go into games.
And it's a player that Reims might have needed, really, if they could have got a deal done. Another player that was linked with a move, although it would have been very complicated to do, was Famara Diédhiou to Rennes. He's staying at Clermont, who still have the option to buy as well at the end of the season. He's been terrific. It's really big for them to keep him as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's a really odd case, this, because I've followed Sochaux and Clermont for the best part of 2 seasons now. And obviously, last season, kind of 2 clubs were around the same sort of area. Obviously, Sochaux, huge club in Ligue 2, their history. Again, they've got one of the biggest budgets in the league. Just in terms of their size, they're up there with Metz, Lens and the rest. But they have decided to extend his loan this season after he had kind of an indifferent spell away from Sochaux. And he's just been a revelation this season. He started off just not really with much expectation. He's come on leaps and bounds and scoring 20 goals already at this stage in a League 2 season, as I'm sure you guys are all aware, is absolutely huge, considering there's not many goals in the league. And to have a striker like that in this league is crazy. I think the next best strike is Pape Sané, and he leads the goal scoring charts by 10 goals. So that just says it all. And I think if he was to go, it would have had to be a buy from Sochaux, and then waiting till his loan deal expired, because I don't think Sochaux even have a buyback option, because they're in the same league. And obviously, when they lent Diédhiou again to Clermont for a further year, they probably didn't envisage this would happen, and it's ironic as well, because they could really do with him at the moment. So yeah, definitely would have been a difficult deal to go through, but it's so vital for Clermont who incidentally, I've just come off the back of watching. They were absolutely horrible tonight, but they when he's on song, they look a different team.
Yeah, and like we were mentioning on our Mercato show, it would have been such a complicated deal with Clermont having to buy him, although very cheaply, and then having to then sell to Rennes, and then working out the ins and outs, and Sochaux really not wanting to do that because of the amount of money that Rennes would give for Diédhiou. But never mind any of that. Just very quickly as well on Ligue and signings that have more about signings that have come into the club. Has there been any interesting deals that people should look out for players that have headed to the second tier?
There's one in between two teams. It's not too interesting, but it's fascinating to see how teams of sort of similar fortunes, and you go to a different club, and it all turns around. So there's a guy called Christian Beckermenga who was on loan from Troyes. He still is on loan from Troyes, but this time he's on loan to Metz rather than Lens. And he started the season with Lens, and I thought he'd be quite good because had a lot of potential, but didn't really hit the ground running under the management there. They obviously had a poor start to the season. And he's gone to Metz, and in his first 2 games, he scored 3 goals. And obviously, they've got a new manager as well. And what they need is goals. And there's so many clubs in the league that just if they had one good goal scorer, they really could propel themselves up the league because the league's so tight this year. So that one stood out for me really as an odd one. But yeah, apart from that, as I say, as I heard you guys saying at the end of your Ligue 1 sort of section there's not really been too much movement in the last few days. So there's not really too much to get your teeth into apart from the big ones which you've mentioned.
Yeah, it is a very strange window of teams not wanting to let go of their players because they're worried about bringing a player in, and the domino effect doesn't happen in that way. It's
Exactly,
a very strange window. Eric, I'm just going to bring you back in for a transfer from a Ligue 2 club to a Ligue 1 club as Remy Walter joined Nice. He's a highly touted young player. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, I mean, he's come up through the ranks as a French youth international. So on the surface of it, it looks like a real coup for Nice. They had signed him from Ligue 2 leaders AS Nancy, but it's interesting because after being somewhat of a fixture, he's still not 21 until March. Walter's lost his place a little bit this season. He's a deep line defensive midfielder, so within that diamond 4-4-2 that Nice play, he'd be a natural replacement for Mendy rather than one of Seri or Coziello. He could probably replace one of them. This isn't as much of a creative impetus as either one of them is. Definitely acts as a shield in front of the defenders, but still a highly rated player. Nice have shown in recent years that under Claude Puel, they're not afraid to give young players a chance. I think this is after his career seems to have stuttered a little bit this season. And I think this is a good move for him to prove himself at a higher level, especially with Nice potentially finishing in Europe next season. There's perhaps even more opportunity for him to get some match time, something with which he had struggled at Nancy. So defensive midfielder, versatile, give the squad some needed depth. A very good move for Nice, in my opinion, and a good move for the player too. Willingness to prove himself at a higher level is always admirable.
Yeah, and I believe that deal was for about $1 million, about $1.5 million, and I think that could be a really terrific deal if he can reach the potential that many thought he would have. The window is slowly drawing to a close. There's just under 20 minutes left for the French window, that is. So to finish tonight, I'm going to talk about some of our favourite moves, really, from Liga and out, much as we did with Mo earlier. I'm going to start with you, Lee, if that's okay. What's your favourite move of the window for players coming into Liga?
As we've obviously already touched on, there's not been lots and lots of activity. But mine, rather than say what's my favourite, I'm going to say my most interesting one. Okay. And I think that could be Alexander Soderlund at Saint-Etienne. Now, I've watched a little bit of him during his time in the Europa League with Rosenborg, top scorer over there in Norway, certainly knows where the net is, got a real eye for goal, and obviously started his career extremely well at Saint-Etienne, scoring the winner in the derby against Lyon. I think this is an interesting one. Obviously, very difficult losing Beric for pretty much the season. And I think he could fill that void. I expect him to score goals. So that's one I'm certainly keeping my eye on.
I think that's an interesting one. I think sort of they do need a striker up there. I mean, especially with Beric's injury, like you mentioned, and he could be an interesting. He got a goal in the most important game for Saint-Etienne in most seasons, so it's always a good start. I'll the same question to you, Will, but I'll make it a little bit easier on yourself. Is any move that you out of Liga or into Liga, and that you think has been a good piece of business?
Well, yeah, I'll just touch on the one that I know really, the Pape Sané one. Just again, I'll reiterate just because for a club like Borg, it's just nice to see a bit of a fairy tale story, and I think there's no real doubt that he will excel at that level. As you see, like there's been a lot of reports in England over the last few months because of people like Mahrez who have gone from humble beginnings in France to go and really smash it in the Premier League. And I think obviously they've done it via Ligue 2 or Ligue 1. So I think with this guy Sané, he's got all the attributes to be a success in Ligue 1. When we see him next season, it just depends if he can apply himself. So yeah, that's the one for me that I'll be looking out for.
Eric, what about your favourite transfer for in clubs in Liga 2 Liga? Eric, is he still there, or is it gone? I'll for the time being, I will say mine just as a moment. I think the one that's been announced a couple of minutes ago, it's not necessarily a transfer, but a contract. Well, it is a transfer in a sense, but more of a buyout clause for the loan. I think that deal for Remy Cabella was really, really smart business from Marseille, and in a window where they were linked with the likes of Wissam Ben Yedder, and eventually had to get settled on players like Florian Thauvin, and who hasn't really been anything of the sort at Newcastle, and Stephen Fletcher. I think signing someone that has improved their team, unlike a lot of the loan signings that they've had, like Mauricio Isla and Lucas Silva, I think that's a really good deal for a club like Marseille. Eric, have we got you back there a moment?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure what's happening there. Yeah, as I said earlier, I really like the move of Said Benrahma on loan to Angers. I think he's been capped for Algeria as a full international, despite his young age, and I think that he really gives another dimension to that club in terms of creativity and trickery with the ball at his feet. Great balance to Kekio Fonfon. It remains to be seen how much Angers are going to use him down the stretch. They do have a fairly settled starting 11 week in and week out, but I think he's a great option off the bench to chase a game, and I think that he's another product of Nice's strong academy, and I think someone who can really boost Angers' hopes of sticking around in those European places come the end of the season.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting move for a club that need extra players. And as for players that have left Liga League, is there anyone you can see being a real success at their new club?
Yeah, I would probably go with again somebody we've touched on earlier, Wabi Kazri. I just think he's got great technical ability, and a little bit like Dimitri Payet has done over at West Ham. Will show his true ability in the Premier League. I think Sunderland fans will like him if he adapts quickly. I think he could really be a really good signing for Sam Allardyce. It would take a bit of getting used to. It's a completely different style of football playing up there. He's in a relegation battle, but he could be the trump card. I really do, and I think that's a really, really good signing for Sunderland.
Yeah, and I think he finally adds some attacking flair to a team that have lacked it really in recent weeks. One transfer out of Liga that I wanted to have a little bit of a chat with you about, Eric, is Stefan El Shaarawy's move back out of Monaco to Roma. He scored last night, ironically enough. Was that just a fail move from the start for Monaco, or did they never really see the best from the Italian?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he was brought in, marketed as a potential false nine / alternative to Anthony Martial. Martial left. He wasn't really given a chance to play up top. That was given to Carrillo and Traore. Due to the raft of injuries that Monaco have had, Traore, Dirar, Elder Costa, Caballero have all missed chunks of time so far this season. He was being given a chance week in and week out, both in the Europa League and domestically, but really failed to make an impact, really failed to make an effort. And that's I think, really what's the crux of his issues at Monaco, is that this team requires a lot of work tracking back. Even players that aren't that physically gifted or adept, like Moutinho, Lamar, Bernardo Silva, they're still working their socks off tracking back and trying to create chances for their team on the counter. And that was something that El Shaarawy was simply unwilling to do. Add that to the increased physicality and pace in France versus Italy, and it's very apparent to see why the club failed to make his move a permanent one, especially with a mooted €14 million fee. It's a shame, given what El Shaarawy has achieved and still can potentially achieve. After all, he's only, I believe, 22 or 23. But it wasn't. If you're not going to play within a team ethos, Leonardo Jardim has demonstrated that he's got no time for you in no uncertain terms over his tenure at the club. His attacking players need to work from the front. And if you're not going to do that, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, and it just adds the more frustration of us watching him this season that he scores an absolutely lovely goal for Roma last night. It compounds that misery that we felt. But a deal that I thought has gone under the radar in the last couple of days is Jimmy Cabo's move to Lorient from Troyes. I think that's a potentially interesting signing from them. Again, it's another one of those deals where it goes under the radar at Lorient, where they pick up a young player that looks like he's a little bit of an interesting talent. He's played well, especially in the last couple of weeks where Troyes have really picked up a bit better form. Saying that a little bit lightly, but an interesting player nonetheless. But as the sort of window comes to a close, Lee, I just wanted to chat about something we have kind of touched upon. It's been very quiet, really, of movement in Liga, even players leaving. Have the dominoes just not fallen? Is there any reason you can give for things not really progressing?
It's an interesting one. I'm not quite sure. I've not quite put my finger on it. I was certainly expecting a lot more activity. I know that a lot of managers in certain clubs are not a huge fan of the window the winter transfer window. Sometimes it's different. Clubs don't want to let teams go, players go. That might have been the talking in it. PSG haven't signed anyone. This is not that they needed to, but even they've been very inactive in this transfer window. It's really difficult to put your finger on it. I would certainly expect that there would, summer transfer window to certainly be a lot more active than this one. It's a difficult one to put your finger on, certainly for me to put my finger on in terms of why. I'm guessing clubs have just not been able to find the types of players they want. They don't want to panic buy. They don't want to buy for the sake of buying, and or alternatively, are happy with the group of players they've already got.
Well, we're just at the moment, we're going to have to say bye to William Gay, who's going to have to quickly shoot off. Thanks for joining us, Will.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Yeah, and if you want to follow him on Twitter, that's at FRFootballWillG. He's an excellent reporter with breaking news of some league stuff. Eric, I kind of want to ask you the same question. It feels like it's been symptomatic across Europe, never mind league. The dominoes just haven't seemed to fall this winter transfer window, have they? Is this something they may need to look to address?
The league in general, or
across Europe, as well as the league in general?
Well, I mean, I feel like a lot of teams are taking more of a wait-and-see approach. With the money coming in, let's look at the Premier League, for example. With the money coming in for the Premier League this summer, I think that, you see the Premier League clubs spending a lot of money, trying to secure their status. The likes of the Norwich, Newcastle have spent. Even Sunderland has spent, quite a decent chunk of money to boost their squad. Celta Vigo have done well as well to bring players in Spain, but I feel like most teams are taking a little bit more of a wait and see approach unless they have something for which they're really battling to a high degree. I mean, looking at Vigo, they have, for example, in Spain, they have a real chance of making the Champions League, even though Villarreal have pulled away from them a little bit. And that money in the Premier League means that those teams which hold a hope of staying up are going to be aggressive in bringing players in that they feel will fit their needs as well. And I think beyond that, most clubs are happy with their situations. Even look at the likes of the top clubs in Italy, Napoli, Juventus, Fiorentina. Stood strong for the most part. The same thing in Germany. We're not seeing activity from the likes of a Dortmund, the likes of a Mönchengladbach, the likes of or significant activity, the likes of a Bayern Munich. I think that teams maybe, unless desperation is in the cards, are maybe becoming a little bit more wise to what sorts of players are and aren't available in this window. And I think that's to be lauded that teams are approaching things with a little bit more caution than they perhaps have in the recent past. So, well done for a little bit more of a considered approach to most clubs across Europe. I'm still not sold on some of the moves the English clubs have made.
As I would be cautious as well. They're all chasing that money train, I think, in the
Oh,
Premier
just
League.
Nathan, can I just jump in here? Gianluca Di Marzio has reported that Chinese Shanghai Shenhua have approached Lavezzi with a pre-contract agreement offering the Argentine a reported 8 to 10 million a year. And it's not clear exactly whether that deal would be made in the summer or now. I'm not sure when the Chinese window closes.
I believe they've been in negotiations to try and do that for the summer. I think from our Mercato show, but we know that Lavezzi does quite like money, so I wouldn't be surprised if a move to China, who are growing, let's not deny that he might move there. But one last sort of deal I wanted to talk about that's really interested me this window is Florian Thauvann's loan back to Marseille. Lee. Is he the right player they need at this moment in time?
No. In a word, no. Absolutely not. They sold him. He wasn't performing during his first spell. He's gone to Newcastle, and he's pretty much, I would say, anybody that's followed his career over the last few years, it's pretty much ended up as you'd expect. It's not worked out for him at Newcastle United. He's going back to his old club, and I just can't see again where it's going to work out for him. I don't know what the right move would be for him at this moment in time. It's a shame because he obviously showed a lot of promise in his early years, and he's certainly a very skillful, technically good player. But in terms of what Marseille need right now, absolutely not. They needed a top quality striker, and not the likes of Thauvin, who is pretty unreliable in terms of and very up and down in terms of his form. So in a word, absolutely no. I think it's a really strange piece of business.
Yeah, and the fact that it seems to have come over Michel's head adds to the absurdity of it. And he wasn't playing at Newcastle. I don't know if people realise that. And it's not like Newcastle are pulling up trees everywhere, left, right, and centre. And he can't get into a settled team. It's a very strange one. I mean, he started the season okay, and fans were raving about his spectacular performance against in the Carling Cup against Northampton Town, which isn't something you shouldn't shout about that too loudly next time. But I'm pretty sure they'll look back on that and feel a little bit silly about that. But it seems to be an attitude thing, I think, for Thauvin from my point of view. I mean, he played a couple of decent games for Newcastle, and he then copied Alan Shearer, pulled it up on Match of the Day, that he copied Chanson Bemba's tuxedo. Sort of, it wasn't really a prank from the Belgian, but he acted a little bit brashly, and that was criticised by him. And ever since then, he's never really recovered any form in any sense of when he played. And I don't think Marseille, with, as Eric's mentioned in the last couple of weeks, the Bouna Sarr and Kevin Kudu playing so well, it doesn't make any sense that Marseille would try and disturb that by bringing a player of his ilk in, unless he's going to play as a substitute, and then that's affecting the reason Thauvin would have come to the club, to play first-team football, to try and maybe sneak into that Euro 2016 squad, as unlikely as that might be. But with a couple of minutes remaining of the window, Eric, could you give us a quick roundup of some of the deals that have happened in the last hour or so?
Yeah, there's not much that I haven't reported yet. Gian-Alain Mboula's deal to Stoke looks like it's being firmed up. Reims have signed Las Bangora from Granada, from Rayo Vallecano on loan. Crete has signed Fabien Barillon from fellow Ligue 2 side Nimes, and Aboubakar Demba Kamara has joined Paris FC from Turkish side Gaziantepspor, as well as Brad Fani, late of Marseille and Rennes, joining Charlton. Charlton, the Addicts, in desperate trouble, trying to bring in some French talent in the likes of Fani and Sonogo to shore things up. But yeah, a really sort of very quiet last hour or so in the window. Unless you've got some late-breaking news coming in, it does appear that that's it for the window in France and with French players.
Yeah, it does seem like it's coming to an end. And one last piece that I've just spotted as well is about Loic Rémy's potential move to Leicester, 100% off. It seems like he's not moving either on a permanent deal or on loan. Lee, he needed the game time really to push himself to that Euro 2016 squad. That's in real jeopardy now, isn't it, without a move away from Chelsea?
Most definitely, and as I spoke earlier, I go and watch Leicester City a lot. I live in Leicester. It would have been a great signing for the club, a really, really good signing for the club. Guaranteed goals, hard-working player, knows where the net is, and ahead of the Euros, he's really now made it very, very, very difficult for himself. Game time at Chelsea in terms of the way they play their formation, he's going to struggle.
Yeah, and he initially wanted a loan deal to try and fight for his position next season as a striker at that club, and I just don't see why you would have done that when Chelsea have essentially wasted his time while they've got Pato through the door, and then essentially gave him a couple of days, if that, to try and find a move that was suitable. I mean, there was plenty of clubs in for him. Leicester's a very reputable club, especially at the moment, to go to, but it does seem like they've wasted that opportunity for him. But hopefully he can sneak a couple of games even behind two players that they're more likely to give games to. But here's hoping. But that's all from us this evening as the clock enters 10 o'clock here, GMT, UK time, but it's 11 o'clock in France, and that's the close of the window. Thanks to all of our guests this evening. Please go and follow them on Twitter. I've already mentioned their tags. And thanks to Lee for joining us. He's at LeeDavy99. Make sure to follow him. He's got some terrific stuff and does some excellent work. Thank you to Eric, as always. Thank you for all of you listening at home. I think I'm going to get some sleep now. Have a wonderful evening.